takes some getting used to, jumping between a Renault 5 and a BX, I have to say, because A, the size, B, suspension difference, the brakes are different, throttle response is different, the gearing's different. It's crazy how two cars that were built along the same period of time can be so blooming different, but that is a Renault 5 and a BX for you. So on Anna, the ratios on the gears are quite far apart, so you have to be in the right gear at the right time if you want to have a proper good driving experience with it. Suspension wise, yeah, she's nice and soft. She's typically French, but very, very direct. The wheels are very close to the corners, so when you drive it just so and get it right, it handles relatively quite nicely. The gearing is kind of more or less following the element of 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, but not quite that high ratio. I think the ratio on this is like 23 and 5th. So you can kind of cruise quite happily at 3,000 revs, which is just sort of in the middle of a nice torque band. I have had a different gearbox in this before, where I think it's the 5-speed gearbox that was used on the 1108 engines, which was normally optional extra, and on those the gearing on a 1.4 means that essentially 70 mile an hour is almost at the absolute peak of the torque curve, so it's almost quite jolty if you want to cruise along at 70 mile an hour, because you just kind of like that. If you come off it even slightly, you know it, because you're sitting in that area on the revs. But yeah, I've had off the top of my head, I'll try and see if I can remember all the different engine gearbox combinations I've actually had in this car, because it is quite a flipping long list. So very originally, obviously the TC I had, which was D684, that one, that was a 1 litre 4-speed. The B-Ridge came with a 1.4 5-speed, which would have been a C1J JB5, and the 1 litre was a 1 litre JB4, which was bonus because the JB4 and 5 use the same length drive shaft, so it was a nice easy straight swap. Not long after passing my test and driving what was at the time the only 1 litre Renault 5 GTL on the planet, because who the hell else is going to downsize the engine cc's in a car? Why the hell not? So I had it as a 1 litre 4-speed initially. Shortly after passing the test, I then got given another car by someone in the owners club who was just like, "You love Renault 5s, I want this to go to a home that's going to look after it best they can." So I ended up with a 5TR, which was a 1.2. The reason why I took that car on was because it became very quickly apparent that actually the 1 litre that we put in, although it ran, it wasn't in the best of health, and actually it had horrific piston slap, and it leaked oil quite nicely, because essentially it had done like 80,000 miles and it had had its bit of wear, and now where it was actually being properly driven and used, it was just finding every way to leak oil, and although it ran relatively nicely, it wasn't actually all too healthy. And given the fact that actually when I passed my test, my life kind of actually evolved around like a 30-mile commute, and that's nothing by today's standards, because that's what I'm now doing. But at the time, I was literally working a few hours at Asda's, so yeah, wasn't earning very much for the commute I was doing. But the having the 4-speed box and a 1 litre engine that wasn't all too good of health meant that actually because of the gearing on the 4-speed, it was sitting at about the 4,000 mark to sort of cruise along at 70. So through someone in the owners club, I managed to find a 1.4 engine that had come out of a Renault 11 that was a runner. So I picked that up. I then got a 5-speed gearbox off someone else, which turned out to be the 1108 5-speed, which is the low ratio one. Put the two together and used that for a little while. That engine unfortunately didn't last very long. It obviously hadn't enjoyed sitting too much. I think it lasted for 8,000 miles before that was quite horrendous as well. Now, because the 5TR that I'd been given, that was 1.2, and that seemed to cruise really blooming well at 70. And I managed to find online a gearbox ratio calculator. Because I do have, or should I say I have acquired over my years, the manuals from the factory that actually tell you all the relevant gear ratios according to the identification number on the tag on the gearbox. So I kind of looked it up and then realised that I had this 5TR that was actually well, it had fallen apart with rust. I was looking at it and suddenly realised actually at some point in its life it had the gearbox swapped, and it actually had the gearbox out of a 5TSE. So it was a JB5. It was from the 85 to the 75 period. That's where the TSE was sold from. But that gearbox was effectively 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. I think the fifth gear was something like 24.6 per thou. So instantly I thought, okay, brilliant. What's going on here? And yeah, so my 1.4 at the time was kind of not very healthy. I realised the gearbox was actually very low ratio, so because it was designed for the 1108, gearing was lower, and therefore it wasn't really very suited for long distance cruising and stuff like that, which is kind of what I wanted it for. So pulled the TSC gearbox out of the 5TR. Then I also found on that weekend an engine that had just been pulled out of a very low mileage 5 Campus Prima, which had the injection on it. I think that engine was on something stupid like 30,000. I know it wasn't much. And I drove up to, I think it was the Peterborough area on the Saturday, picked up the engine, then came back and pulled the gearbox out of the car that was basically now sitting as spares. And then on the Sunday I went down to the garage at 9 o'clock in the morning, and at 3 o'clock in the afternoon I drove it up with the other engine and gearbox in. And that included having to swap over all the ancillaries, because the injection engine that I bought, there was a few things that you had to swap over, because where it was injection, they just put blanking plates over things like where the fuel pump would normally go on a carburetted model. And obviously you had to take the manifold off because I had a carburettor, not injection. I did think about, shall I see if I can incorporate it, but then it was kind of all the blue and faff of the wiring, and I didn't have time, and to be honest I just like carburettors, they're nice and simple, I understand them, so I just pulled it off, put it back on, and by pot luck everything just worked beautifully, aside from forgetting to take the gear selector rod off. And obviously, as we always find out lifting things out, you always find out the tensile strength that things do or don't have, and that's what I found out that day. So yeah, so we've so far gone from 1 litre to 1.4, then swapped it to another 1.4 with a different gearbox. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think that's about 1 litre, 1.4, 1.4, 3 different gearboxes. So yeah, that's how many it's been through so far. So we're up to 1.4 with a good 5-speed box. Now that combination actually stayed in for a while, because I soon got a company vehicle and therefore wasn't using it every day, and therefore it didn't really matter too much. As long as it started and drove, I didn't really care. So what did happen was that I found the weakness of the JB5. So I think it's between 85 and 87, the JB5 was used for up to, I think it was like the one, I think it was potentially up to one, I can't remember exactly where the model sat, but basically unless it was a turbo that had a JB3 box, anything above 1108 had a JB5, I believe. But the trouble was actually JB5 had the same size bearings on the differential as the smaller JB4 that was used on the 1108 and the 1 litre. And the trouble was that actually that bearing couldn't actually take the power that the 1.4 put out. So they were quite well known for blowing up the diff bearing, and then you had to go and have it rebuilt, which I found because I was asking advice from people about how to do the job of taking it apart and doing the bearings, and they were like, oh yeah, they were always doing that. And then I found out because of the gearbox, the differential bearings being weak. So yeah, I predictably managed to blow that JB5 up quite spectacularly, and the first weekend after getting my company vehicle, I pulled the JB5 out, stuck the JB4 in that had come off the original 1 litre engine, stuck that on the 1.4 engine, so that I knew that it had a gearbox that weren't likely to blow up at any time soon. And I think that stayed in it for quite a flipping while, because I wasn't really going anywhere in my own car very much to warrant all the extra work to swap and change things around, so I just left it exactly as it was. So it just meant that oh, hello. Like that. Please don't tell me something's going on this road at this point. Oh no, sweet, off that way. Sweet, that's fine. But yeah, so that gearbox went in then. But then I slightly blew the engine up. Not entirely sure what happened, but somehow in the snow it got so flipping hot that it completely cooked. The temperature gauge never moved though, which is a bit that still stuns me. Something happened there, so so it now had a good gearbox, but technically a blown engine. And over the Christmas I literally pulled the engine apart, chucked a head gasket on, over tightened the head down to try and take some of the warping out of it. And luckily it just ran and worked perfectly. It was like, sweet, that's exactly it is him. That was like 2018. And I then didn't touch it and swap or change it around at all until what would have been 2021? Yeah, 2021. Where I knew that the engine in it was quite shot because it had been driving around for quite a while with blown rings from where it overheated spectacularly. The gearbox, actually the gearbox is now in it now. No, it isn't. So that one came out, so I knew that engine was blown, took the pair out, put the gearbox back in the garage to spare, despite the fact it now done about 90k and 10,000. That was on a 1.4 that was actually way too powerful for the gearbox. I then found a chap somewhere in London who had a completely unknown engine gearbox that he pulled out of a Campus Prima that was completely scrap, which he was literally just wanting rid of, so he gave it to me for nothing, which is quite nice. It just meant that I just had to pay for petrol to get there, which is nice. That went in, which gave it a nice little lease of life. That was over. In fact, that was during one of the lockdowns, and where I'd actually taken the shell off the road to do some welding on it, because I found it had got quite a lot of rust that I'd just kind of been pretending didn't exist for a long time, and then it really did exist, because there was massive holes everywhere. So I did all that work, put another engine gearbox in it, then did a few road trips in it, and was just kind of back in love with it, just like, yeah, I'm not letting this car go because, and then along came 2022, I think it was about the April time, and this shell came up in Facebook Marketplace, and I just looked at it, and I was sitting there thinking, I've seen a new old stock shell on Facebook for £10,000. New old stock, never been used, never even been registered, not even got a chassis number stamped in it. Someone's kept it as a spare because they used to do stock racing GT turbos back in the day, and this was a shell they never used, so it was sitting as a spare. And I sat there thinking, the only way I'm going to make my car really nice is to reshell it. There's no other way, because you can't unbend that shell. So I went along and saw this on Facebook Marketplace, went and had a look at it, because it was on 15,000 miles, and it sat since 91, and essentially just didn't run very well because had curb issues. So then what I did was went along, had a look at it, realised that I was basically looking at a new old stock shell that had got 15 count in it and was registered, and thought, you know what, this is about the best I'm ever going to find to give my car the justice it deserves and live on again. So I got it covered home, swapped all the interior across, so that basically I uplifted a TC up to GTL spec, but obviously the combination, all the things that I put on it to make it exactly as I wanted it, based on all the pictures and stuff I'd seen on Google and all that when I was absolutely crazy looking at them online for years. Swapped it all in, but left it as a 1 litre 4-speed initially. In the process of making it all work, the drive shafts gave up, so pulled it apart, and I stood there and thought to myself, if I get this thing on the road, I'm not swapping, I'm not leaving it as a 1 litre 4-speed, because I just can't be arsed with that gearing. I'm a bit older now, I'm used to pushing along at a relatively nice speed. I don't want to be sitting at some silly daft speed in 4th gear. So I had the JB1 box that I'd had previously in the other shell, and because I had to train drive shafts because I'd given up, I just chucked the JB1 and those drive shafts straight in, because I thought there's no point wasting the gear oil swapping in my spare drive shafts for that, and then I had to change it again because I want the 5-speed box. So I chucked the 5-speed box on the 1 litre. I then drove it down to Dover to pick up the dashboard, which was hilarious, because that's where I found out the reason why the 1 litre never had a 5-speed option, because the 1 litre just didn't have the guts at all to pull a 5-speed gearbox. It just didn't. So you had to sit there in 4th gear revving its nuts off a little bit. Yeah, once I got it on the road and it was happy, I chucked the 1.4 straight in it, and then swapped the anti-roll bar over, because the 1.4 shell had an anti-roll bar, the 1 litre didn't, because it wouldn't have ever had enough power to need one. But trust me, put 1.4 in the shell, and my god, you need a flipping anti-roll bar, because yeah, it's like driving a Mark 1 steroids if you don't have an anti-roll bar on this shell with 1.4 in it. It's hilarious. So yeah, it's not changed since that reshell now, because it's just been happy as it is. So it's now sorry, no. When I then it then had the 1 litre 55-speed box on, which didn't have the power. When I chucked the 1.4 in, the 1.4 was a 1.4 I'd bought off someone else on Facebook who had stripped a absolute mint 35,000 mile wearing 19 apart, and I'd heard the engine on this video. He then pulled out the car, and I was just like, for what he wants for it, I'm having it. And so I had that sat in the trailer for a little while. I had intended to put it in the car before the reshell, but never did. So at the moment, the shell's on 135k. No, sorry, the clock's on 135k. The shell's on something around about the 25,000 mark, I think. Everything attaching the car to the road tallies up with the clocks, and the engine gearbox was on about 45,000 when they went in. So yeah, it's a bit of a mishmash. But to be honest, a car this age, what the hell is it? Unless it's been virtually very little driven, or has been pretty much one person owned and only driven to the shops and back. So it's had a very typical life for a car of its age, but been very, very, very well loved in that process. So the main thing is it's still around and still driving around, still being used, and that's probably the main thing about it. So, and I absolutely adore it. So yeah, that's me waffling on for 20 minutes about every single engine and gearbox combination I can remember having fitted to B95XKE. And I still can't believe that she's 39 years old this year. It's crazy. But I decided that I had to drive her for her birthday because a car likes being used. It's nice sitting around being stared at. So yeah. Oh, I wouldn't have thought I'd still have. If I'd have said to myself 12 years ago, yeah, we'll have this car, when it turns 30, I thought, we're shit. I'm never letting it go. So yeah, I'm gonna have it when it's 50 years old, as far as I'm concerned. But to actually still have it, I'm actually quite impressed. It's no word of a lie that I have had ups and downs, and I think I put it up for sale once or twice, but I've never been able to. I've always kind of got half through the description, realised that actually all these things that I'm describing are the reasons why I put them on the car and why I love it, and then I've just quickly retracted the advertising because I've just been like, no, I can't let it go. I love it too much. I've made it the way it is for a reason, because I want it that way. If anyone out there has got the alloys from a TSE spec, then by all means give me a shout, because it's got the boutique spec ones on at the minute, because I managed to find them last year, but I'm always open to find TSE alloys, because they were always a bit of a dream, and I'd still like to fulfil that dream if I can. So right, I'm going to shut up now, because I think I've waffled on for long enough, but just very, very happy to share the fact that Anna is 39 years old today, and I've had her since she was 27. Yeah, happy indeed. So thanks for watching.